Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Good evening and welcome one and all to October 27th, 2021 meeting of the Westminster Select Board at 6:30 p.m. I will now call the meeting to order. Are members of the public online? Can they hear us?
Yes.
Jones, welcome. Okay, adjustments to the agenda.
We can remove 6A as it's not needed any longer this evening.
Oh, okay.
Any other adjustments from the town manager?
I have no.
Another adjustment would be 6I. Executive session will be tabled. We are 4 tonight. We are, one member is not present, and is required for that. Moreover, I want to apologize on the record and to the public. And I want to thank Toby Young for also bringing this to my attention. Executive session, and another member of the public as well. Executive session is supposed to be noticed and voted on, I understand, from the rules of procedure. So going forward, we will implement those rules at the next meeting for executive session, should one be called for. The proper procedure, I believe, is to notify the public and all those present that we are going to go into an executive session and have some type of specificity as to what that may be entailed, but what's going to be discussed at that session to at least to a degree. And on top of that, we're supposed to vote first to go into executive session, and not just proceed to it. So we will then have a vote on that determination going forward, and then vote to go. What if it's unanimous? If it's a majority, and then we can go into it. Then it'll be placed on the agenda at that time to go into executive session. I believe I got that right. If I didn't, I apologize.
Sounds good.
Okay. So 6I will also be tabled until the next meeting, please. Thank you, Toby. Okay, acceptance of the minutes, October 13th, 2021.
I move that we accept the minutes as printed, because they had a lot of details.
I second that.
Motion to, motion to accept the minutes of Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 have been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Thank you. Communication and public comments.
You were supposed to hear a request from Jeffrey Karlstrom, and he, at the last minutes, declined to come. So for a previous agenda that he needed to attend, which is his wife's birthday. So I kept it in there, all the information in your packet, so that you can be ready. I'm thinking for the next meeting, he'll request it again. His original request is in there for what he's asking for. He wants to know about the noise ordinance, and then he just took away his ability to be here, so.
Okay, so
That's it.
we will table that until such time as Mr. Karlstrom is available, and everyone has. I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Jones here. I have a question on that, if you will allow me to ask it.
Sure.
The noise ordinance, one section was the decibel level at the property line. And I don't know if this is an item the select board will take up later, but it appears to be very vague. And if you're mowing your lawn and et cetera, someone complains that ordinance could apply broadly to them. So I don't know if there's going to be a more defined determination by the select board on the decibel level, the time of day, et cetera. So that was just my thought as a stakeholder. Thank you.
Thank you, as always, and I appreciate that. And again, that's something that we can consider and discuss in detail. Mr. Kallstrom appear to discuss it in detail, how it is affecting him. Okay, but thank you for your input as a stakeholder. Are there any other comments and communications from the public? Okay.
Quick question on it, though.
Yep.
If you're gonna leave it in a package, this information is available to anybody.
That's correct,
That's correct.
So you're gonna carry it into the next meeting
just as it is, yep.
If
he asks to be on the agenda.
okay, just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
Yeah, just whatever we have, it's available for everybody.
Oh, absolutely, yep.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, discussion, action, American Rescue Plan, ARPA, COVID local recovery funds, an update.
We haven't met since our last meeting, but just for the public's knowledge, we have our next meeting is November 4th at 5:30 at the Institute, and Katie Buckley, a state advisor, will be there to help us through some ideas that have been already presented. So November 4th, 5:30 at the Institute.
Terrific. Thank you, Russell. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, we will move on to unfinished business B, Hartley Hill Road, private section update, if any.
A brief discussion with Larry Slayson today. They have not formally created anything, but it's his thought that the town should not create a quit claim deed, and he will be in touch with Robert Wickberg to explain why. It is putting town at a financial burden. It could. And the idea that losing that section of road is a distinct possibility, and that would be devastating to the road crew. So at this point, his recommendation to Mr. Wickberg is to drop that.
And that recommendation is going to be made in writing?
Yes, it will be.
And that will be supplied to the board?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any comment from the public or anyone else? Thank you. Hearing none. Moving on. Unfinished business. C, invoice for school district update.
Kevin, you received the email also?
Yes.
Our request for payment for the elections and the extra tax payments has been denied at this point. They are still in a flex of boards who has charge of what budget and what monies. So at this point, we have been declined for payment.
Any comment or input from the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
So are we going to resubmit that to the next board?
In reading the email, it sounds like he's not going to just drop it. It's just not going to happen right now.
Gotcha.
Because of, again, the board is
Yeah,
in a flex of
Yeah.
the merger and demerging.
yeah, gotcha.
Did we even have a choice? We didn't have a choice. We had to expend those expenditures.
Right, and they did agree to pay for the elections
Right.
for it. So I hope it's just a matter of time, and they'll get their finances together and
Thank you.
cut us a check.
Again, thank you for that, Russ. Can you just send out that letter to the entire board?
I surely can.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, thank you. We will move on to unfinished business D, Collaborative Finance Processing Manual update by Darlene Kelly, who is with us.
Hello.
Hi.
I am Darlene Kelly from Nemrick, also a Westminster resident. So I have put together a bunch of the procedures, internal procedures for the manual, and so I could send those out to each of you so you could see what I've been working on. I feel like it's kind of a large amount to put in your packets, but that it would be better to maybe send it out in an email to all of you so you could kind of get an understanding of what I've been working on and what I meant by in-depth screenshots of each thing that we're doing. So if that's okay with you, I can send those out starting tomorrow. And it's a work in progress. Each function that is done in the finance office needs to be noted, and it just a lot of information and screenshots and details of how the procedure should work. So that's what my thought process was, is maybe after this, I would send you an email that each of you could see what I've done so far.
Terrific.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So are all the major pieces sort of in there, even if they're not finished?
No,
No, okay.
not even close, because there's so much detail that is done in every step that I'm detailing every single step, that from going over to get the mail, to who opens the mail, to how is it distributed to your department heads, how is it coded, how does it get back to Kelly for accounts payable, when does your approval process happen, how does it get entered into Nemrick, step by step in Nemrick, how it gets approved by you, so it's not just the summary that exists right now, it's every single step, so that if, someone was injured or not able to come in, somebody could take that and go step by step by step down in the process.
Sounds great.
So it's just a little bit of, it's a lot of detail, and it's a lot of opening up your backup that we have on our system, and me starting to do one function and cutting and pasting, snipping the screen, so it's like, and like I called Kelly yesterday and said, walk me through every step that you do when you do accounts payable. Who gets the mail? Who opens the mail? How does it get to Chuck and Russ and the town clerk? And so that's
Great.
where I'm at the moment.
Really?
So
Any questions?
No, it's really
Any
good.
public comment? Terrific. Okay, seeing none, let's move on to unfinished business. E, financial discussion with Darlene Kelly.
So I sent information out to you guys through Russ. I sent you some budget to actual. I sent you a balance sheet. I sent you a narrative of my recommendations and what I was seeing in your financials. So I thought, we'd kind of start with that narrative that I did. So,
This one.
yes, that one.
Yeah, very
Sorry,
good.
that is the one page I
No, but this
left at
was,
home, so I apologize.
this was nice, easy reading too. So
That's
thank
what
you.
I thought maybe, and I thought it would be easier for me to come in person and kind of, and find it a little hard over Zoom to kind of talk about this. And so, taking sorry, I can't see anything. Your budget to actual report and just kind of noting, it looks like, revenues are on target for where we should be at this time of year. But I did note that you have a pretty significant delinquent taxes. So I'm not sure what that process is. And I think we need to discuss that issue from February of last year with delinquent taxes. I don't know if you recall, last February, your direct debits weren't processed correctly. They were processed in the NEMRIC system correctly. They were not processed at the bank correctly. The wrong file was pulled into the bank. And so people owe some money that they probably weren't told about until I had discovered this in June, getting ready for your audit. So we need some kind of clarification to those taxpayers that they owe money. They probably are not aware of that. Granted, they should have seen that not come out of their bank account or for the correct amount, but I think it's courtesy as well from the office to inform those people that that happened.
These are the payments that automatically come out of their,
Yep, they've requested to automatically come out when the file was pulled into the bank software.
yeah.
February of 20 was pulled in, not 21.
Mhm.
So there's a difference in money, and some people's accounts were closed,
Right,
and so their ACH bounced back to the town.
Have we
so,
had phone calls on those?
We have, probably half of them have settled out,
mhm.
so we've got about,
When you say that, I mean, we talking 100 people or 10 people or?
I think there was 30,
36 or 40, it was
Yeah.
right around that.
so
that
about
there was.
20 of them have settled out, and the other 20 are,
And have we notified them? Have we sent them a letter or?
no.
This is the first discussion I saw it here. I didn't know, did I miss something? I don't remember having this discussion before, so.
I vaguely remember a discussion.
We had
Maybe-
a brief one
Yeah.
that we need to send.
Yeah,
Paul was going to tackle this and get a letter out.
well, he was supposed to write the letter. Uh-huh.
Well, we were gonna help him, but Darlene can help him now,
Yeah.
an official version of it,
Yeah,
so,
I think we definitely should send a letter to the,
yeah.
I
It's a
assume,
courtesy, yeah.
I don't know, this is not my decision, but that interest and penalties probably,
That's my question, why, normally you have to come to us to waive the interest and penalties, unless it's,
Most of these are $40 total, so your interest and penalty are,
one of them is not, though. One is
Mhm.
over 3,000.
mhm.
wow.
Her entire ACH bounced back as the account was closed.
Mhm. So would we need a motion to waive the?
May I have a quick question?
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah.
On the larger account, our error, that you just mentioned, has that been cured yet?
I don't know. I didn't look individually into that person's account. I can help do that.
Russ, has that been fixed yet or not?
can you repeat your question? I didn't,
The $3,000?
no, I guarantee it's not been settled out. We've been receiving the $7.42 ones. I have not seen the big one, which I did, honestly, I didn't see that one. So.
And you didn't have to address why they were late, because,
They, when they call, they get the explanation. Most of them do, because it's, again, showing a balance of $7.42. So either they'll send it and call, or they just send it and just accept the idea.
and we have waived any late fees to these people at all?
No, we sent out the bills the way they went out. So what you do is if you're gonna do one, you gotta do them all. You give them a credit towards next year or their next half a payment.
I guess that's what I'm asking. That comes in front of the board normally.
Yeah.
Like, what is our procedure and what do we need to know? And I'm a little lost at why we haven't been addressed about it, that's all. If somebody runs into us and they go, hey, what it is, I wouldn't, until this conversation came up, know what they were even talking about, you know? Because normally we go back and we come with a list, and we say, for these people, because of this mistake, we waive all the late fees and penalties.
Mhm.
So we cleaned it up, and then, so if somebody else comes and say, hey, my neighbor didn't have to pay the late fee, why didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, so we need to at least mark out who they are and where they are, and just have the select board just clean sweep that these 36 people are all waived from paying any late fees.
I have that list, so it can be provided.
Thank you.
You bet.
So would having a list presented at the next meeting be practical? Can that be done?
Yes, absolutely.
so the board can address and remediate the,
I think
whatever those numbers are.
it's in good faith. I mean,
No, you're absolutely right.
we recognize it was a mistake, was nobody to really blame, but we're gonna say we're not gonna charge you so that we don't get somebody else down the road asking for, why did we do it to them and not them?
Absolutely.
Right, because in the system of NEMRIC, it was processed as if it was correct. So they wouldn't have been told or warned last fiscal year that this had happened. It
Right.
wasn't in their wheelhouse that it had happened because no late notices were generated because it had cleared the system correctly. Because it's a two-step process with NEMRIC, you process it and post it, and then you go to the outside bank and pull in that file.
Okay.
So in NEMRIC, it looked like it was current until June, when I was getting ready for your audit.
Thank you very much. It's nice and good to know how I can explain to somebody who calls and asks. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. So going down that narrative, I have a few, I guess, questions for the board. I don't know if it's you or Paul. When I come across inconsistencies or things that I think need to be maybe a little more in the proper accounting procedure, is that something that I should address? Should I come to you, such as, an example, I noticed your zoning salaries were zero. And so that struck me as odd, and I mentioned it in that narrative and asked. My understanding is they've always booked a journal entry once a year for those salaries, where I personally think you should book that on a pay cycle as you do your other salaries and pay it out and let the payroll system hit those expenses every pay period as your other salaries hit your lines. So is that, I've asked Kelly, she said we book it once a month, once a year. And I asked why. She said they couldn't tell what hours they were working. And I said, well, the same goes, you're booking it once in February. That tells me you're not doing any other zoning work after February. That doesn't make sense. You're doing it, just take that salary, spread it out over 26 pay periods and hit that line every pay period. So you can see that someone's doing the zoning work and getting paid for it. So that's a little odd to me, and I think it's not very transparent that you're booking that full salary once a year in February was last year. So, is that stuff, you give me permission? Should I just choose to change that with notifying the office that should be done? I'm not quite sure on those things, how to maneuver.
Well, it might improve the way they work, actually.
I mean, do you you and Kelly keep track of your zoning work, like by the hour, or you just do it and then once a year? How is that?
All
How's that
my
work?
time cards, if you look at them, have zoning hours and town manager hours. So, and mine is salary, which is going to be a very, very easy process. Kelly's is a little different. It's hourly. She is hourly, but that is salaried. It's a guaranteed amount that she does for processing for the DRB and the PC. So, but like she said, you can divide it by 26 and pay it out that way. Just know we didn't create that. It has been a process that Westminster has been doing for multiple years with Doreen Woodward being both. That's how the accounting always went. Nobody raised the flag, so we continued the process. So,
and I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's more transparent to show that you're paying somebody to do zoning work all year round. You're not just paying them in February. And you're not paying a chunk. And if you ever change and that position becomes a hired position outside the town manager's realm, you'd need to do it. So that would just my thoughts. Because when I look down at your it's hitting your town manager line, and your town manager line is overstated. Not me, is it? Okay.
My brother.
So,
But I think transparency is really important. And we've had problems in the past where somebody didn't know what they were supposed to do, so they overlooked it and it ended up costing us. And there's no reason why any of this information couldn't come back to us and work it out so that we know. Because I think it's important that we do understand it. And
Yeah.
whenever I'm looking at a budget, I always want to see that accrual. I don't want them to see accrual like, here, we'll just take all of it and say this spent. I like to see as we go along, we accrue. Well, if we're not waiting until there's nothing being spent and then we wait to the last of the year to take it out, that doesn't make sense to keep track of that line item.
yeah, and that's not how you budget at home, you know,
Right.
you budget
No.
year all across. So that would be a recommendation that I had. We talked about the tax payments in there. And then I did do this without your permission, so I apologize if we want to change it back. I created a new fund in your financial statements for the FEMA 729, right, storm? So that it can be represented separately, so you know where it stands at any point in time. So I was incorrect in putting the number down as 12. It's your Fund 20 when you look at your budget to actuals now. So everything related to the storm is now out of that miscellaneous select board line and put in a storm. So the money for the line of credit is in there, the $150,000 from the contingency fund is in there, plus all your expenditures for the storm. So it's on your budget to actual, Greg, if you're looking for it, your other report. But so it's, you can see it clearly. It's not gonna be in the middle of your general fund balance. You're gonna be able to identify it easy. So it's in this big, thick packet of budget to actual stuff, and it's shows you as of the other day when I ran this, I think you've spent $680,000 on the storm.
And what page are you on, darling?
Hold on, sorry.
Okay.
See when my glasses is fogging up here. Let's see here. Funds, bridge, reappraisal, retreatment, equipment. I don't know which one it is.
Don't worry about it. I'll find it.
Funds, is it not on here?
But it's a great idea. Just
Well, I don't know where it is at the moment here, but so it's just
It's in
a
there
little
somewhere,
easier to look at. Should be on here. Well, I'm not spotting it quickly
Sorry.
yet.
I'll
So
look for it.
I will make sure I get that to you. I thought it was in that budget to actual. So it just is a little more, a little clearer that you can see what's happening to that fund at any given time. So I will get that to you. I'm not sure why it's not in this report. The other, so it's just so you can see that where you stand at any point in time. The other thing that I did was there was a paving invoice paid for Pike. It just hit, the expense was hitting in your general fund as a transfer to the retreatment fund. I didn't think that was the correct way to represent that was an actual expense from the retreatment. So I created a retreatment expense and moved the money from the retreatment fund into the general fund because the general fund paid out the expense, $269,000. You don't have cash.
I was just gonna ask you that. So that's on page, that's what I didn't understand. So on page 12 and 26. Yeah,
Yep.
could you explain that to me, where
Yep.
it is, or is?
So your general fund paid those expenses to Pike.
Yeah.
You had money in your retreatment fund,
Okay,
but your retreatment fund doesn't have a checking account or cash. So it can't pay that bill.
Okay.
right? Because there's no cash to write the check. There's no way to write the check out of that fund.
Yeah.
So your general fund paid for it, and the money came back from the retreatment fund. But it was before, when I was looking at your financials the other day before I presented to you, it was sitting in a transfer to retreatment fund account where it shouldn't go that way. I transferred the 135 that was appropriated, and then I moved 269 back, so we had a clear trail of the appropriation from the budget was sent to the retreatment fund, and then the retreatment fund paid the general fund back for using, general fund cash was used to pay the retreatment. So the retreatment fund gave the money back to the general fund.
So that explains the
So-
149,
On what page?
same page, and on, it's got a negative 149. I'm just trying to, where it says retreatment fund now shows a negative 149. Is that because we had 149? This is on page, this same page, page 12 of 26.
12
Well, it's the difference between,
Right. So what,
12 of 26. So you had brought in 135
right,
in appropriations, you've spent out 284. So the retreatment fund has, yeah. the
it's a
retreatment-
negative
Use the
149.
revenue up here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this particular year, you spent more, but you have fund balance. So your fund balance, which I gave you a fund balance report, or a due from report, you should have about $40,000 left in your retreatment fund. So you can look at your balance sheet for your retreatment fund, and you could see you had fund balance from, so savings from a previous year in your fund balance. So you spent it this year, so you're gonna spend down that fund balance.
It's just seeing new numbers is taking me a little
Yeah.
bit, but I think it follows makes.
So
more
then
sense.
you'll see revenue come into the general
Exactly.
fund to offset that $269,000
Right.
expense in the general fund. So you're not spending out more than you took in. The money came in from the retreatment fund as a revenue. You should see that. So the other thing that I worked on with Chip Stearns in our office, because you guys have talked about it a little bit, and I find it really hard to figure out a clear, easy way to show you what it would look like if your highway department was a separate fund. So this sample that you see is, Chip helped with this, and we took your backup, so this is not data that's been done on your live system, it's backup, you send us a backup every night, we keep it on our corporate server. So Chip took and figured out from your account combinations what are expenses related to highway, what revenues are clearly highway. The only expense that isn't showing in this sample is your benefits. So all the benefits for the highway is not in this sample. But this is kind of what we're talking about, where your highway is a separate fund. It doesn't necessarily have to be voted on as a separate tax rate. It just gets represented in your financial statement as a separate fund. So you can always see the highway revenues, the highway expenses, and what the fund balance for the highway is. So this is just a sample of what it could look like if you vote to do that and separate out highway less, plus needing to move benefits over. I think you should tie benefits to the departments you have. I personally think that is an easier way than just lumping all benefits under administration, because that's not, the true cost of your highway includes their benefits, and that should be in here.
I'm real happy with this, to be honest with you.
So we would
I
have-
read it and I was going, I think that's what I thought we were asking for from the beginning, really. So we're not physically separating it like we are with the fire department or the school.
Correct.
We're just on paper separated.
Right, so it's a part of your whole financial, it's not a separate entity like the fire district.
Right, exactly. No, I like it.
So we would have to do a whole renumbering of your accounts, like the first few digits you're gonna see would be different.
Right.
Because you don't have room in your chart of accounts to do it another way. Because of unused old accounts, the only way would be putting highway in front of general fund, and that's usually not what you want to do. You want to put highway behind general fund when you report out on your financials. So it would require some account redo that Chip has kind of figured out in his mind would be able to be done. It's something Nemrick would do for you. And then you would, and he said, and I asked him, how did you know this is highway's true fund balance? Because that was another, like, how do you figure that out when it's all lumped? And he was able to get it to balance based on your budget and based on prior years, that he knows this is a true fund balance that would now sit in this highway fund, if you decide to do that, and a general fund, if you decide to split the two. But again, you can create one tax rate. You don't have to vote on it separately, but you need to, you show that of your taxes that you're asking to be raised, this is how much of that goes to highway, and these are the expenditures that your highway typically or saw in the backup at the time he did this for last year.
So I have a question. This seems like a great idea. It makes me a little nervous when you talk about renumbering all the accounts. It seems like that might be a major.
They change them all the time. I never could figure them out anyways, as long as they do.
Your account structure is an old style. I actually find it very challenging. In our system, there's usually a 1 digit somewhere, like, let's see, what's it? Well, in this case, the 5, you see the 1025 or 5300, the 5 means it's highway. So, or no, sorry, the 5 means it's a revenue, the 102 means it's a highway, but it's hard to distinguish for me. I just got to learn your chart of accounts a little better. What is your, when I'm looking at your chart of accounts, your revenues and your expenditures aren't clear to me. I'm used to seeing a 3-digit, a 1-digit, or something like that. That's a 2 means it's a liability to me. A 5 or a 6 means it's a revenue. So now when I look at this, I would know the 5, 3 immediately, would be an expenditure, the 5, so.
But all the
In the
102,
2000s,
all
yeah.
the 102 would belong to.
Highway. So at any point in time, you could run a report with just 102, and you would just get highway related.
So the
stuff.
storm, for example, we would actually have a line item under 102 for the storm, if you were gonna keep track of that repairs, or it just gets accumulated in all the other expenses?
So the storm would go in that separate 020 account, the fund I put it out, because this is only your general operating budget, what your voters voted on, not special situations.
Okay.
Special situations, I'd rather encourage you to see in a separate fund that is easy to be tracked, like your ARPA money and that.
And is all the labor separated out for the storm? So all the labor would go into that 20?
No, your labor's gonna stay in your general fund, because it's gonna be probably your match that you need to present to FEMA. So you're gonna be able to show by time cards and stuff the town's match, but you're not physically moving those labor costs to that grant fund. You're just representing it as your in-kind donation when you're going after the grant.
Okay.
The only thing that would be hard to digest when we talked about it was that once they start to go on overtime, is what period of time were they on overtime? Were they on overtime on the storm, or were they on overtime on general expenses? So you just have to average it out, I assume, right?
I would say by date, you could tell if it was storm.
We should be able to figure that out.
No, but if you're working somebody on the storm and on the storm, and the next thing they do is they're working on a culvert, it's nothing to the storm, but now they're over their hours, so they're on overtime. But they could go back to the other way, if you had worked on regular hours, then they're on the storm doing a culvert. So I don't think it would matter that much as long as we broke it out.
Well, I think your timesheets would tell you if you work 10 hours on that day and
I
you
was
only
just
work
gonna say
8,
that,
those 2 hours are your
This is gonna be
overtime.
relatively easy to figure out the overtime.
Yeah.
John Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the comment on FEMA and time, I think we'll discuss that a little further, but I wanted to kind of bring it up now because you folks are talking about accountability. Anything you do for work that you want money back from the federal government, that has to be totally separate. So if they're tooling along and they have to go to a road that's washed out, they stop their time and they have a time card to say what they responded to. And you need to show them in the process of accounting for the finances. And there's a whole docket that I have here that I can get to everybody. But so I just want to make sure we're clear on the emergency stuff. And when you ask FEMA for money back, there's a whole procedure that they have drafted up that they recommend following to get their money. So I would like to see us include that in this finance manual and the procurement policies as well, if we can. So thank you.
Very familiar with that and the for equipment and the FEMA rates. So, yep, absolutely can do that.
Thank you, John. Can you forward that on to all of us?
I will, yep. I'll send the whole packet that I'll talk about under new business
Okay.
for the transportation fund we're looking at, grant. Okay.
I think we're all in agreement on that here, and thank you again for your input. That was timely.
So you guys
Continue.
can make the decision when you are ready for the highway. I just wanted to give you a sample. Chip had worked on it for me because I was like, how can I explain this? And he's like, let's try this. So that's an example. And then the final thing that I did give you, and I just, want, again, this is your due to, due from report that shows where all your funds in the moving of money and how it, so I just, want to bring to your attention at the current time, how we talked about using cash between funds. You're doing that at the moment. If you look down at this due to, due from, the capital improvement fund needs to pay the general fund $29,000. I've asked Paul to transfer that, but you are using cash from other funds as you speak now. You've been wondering and questioning and asking that about the line of credit and how do you use the cash from other things that you've gotten money for, and you're borrowing from yourself and you're not paying interest, and you're doing that now. And this is a representation of that, for example, in the capital improvement fund. The general fund has paid out $29,000 worth of expenses and need to get reimbursed from that fund for it. In that fund, you do have cash, so that cash can move over and absorb that due to, due from. But it is a normal course of business for this due to, due from and borrowing and paying back the other funds. It's how you ebb and flow till you get your next tax. Because you're not living off what you collected on your taxes in September all the way to February. You're doing this between funds till you get to your next tax payment. So I just kind of trying to, due to, due froms are hard to understand, so I'm trying to think of an easy way to explain. I've asked, just think of it like your normal budget at home. You don't have a separate checking account for your truck payment, your groceries, your, school debt. You're having one checking account that maybe this week you're gonna pay your car payment and that's a little bit of your grocery money, but you're gonna have enough money for your grocery money. So it's kind of that theory. You don't set up cash accounts for everything you spend.
So,
Yeah.
I have a question. So my question is at the end of last fiscal year, the auditor showed us with a surplus. I don't know, 400,000 something.
Yep.
Is that money in this general fund balance?
It's your general fund balance. It's not cash. This is cash.
Right.
That's not cash.
Right.
that's a surplus that could be factoring into some of your cash.
Mhm. Right,
That's the surplus left over what we didn't spend.
right,
Over the years, it's
Exactly.
built up over
At the end of the year,
years.
you-
right. It's what the auditor, right.
But it's years of saving, of underspending your budget, or having revenue you didn't budget for come in. That's what your fund balance is. Your cash is sitting at $1.2 million right now. So that's where I'm like, why don't you use your own cash to, yes, the storm fund needs reimbursement. It needs to pay the general fund because it's paid out those expenses. And at some point, yeah, that does need to happen, but you didn't need to do it right now. You had cash. You have cash to cover that shortfall until you either get reimbursement for FEMA, which we know probably isn't going to happen this fiscal year. That's probably unrealistic. So that fund is going to owe for till next year. But when that cash comes in, that due to, due from gets paid back and it's cleared. So it's common to borrow from other funds, and the system manages it for you. And this is a report that shows you how it's managed.
My apologies.
But let me point out, the select board, we sit here in all these meetings, we really don't know. So when we make decision, we try to make the best decision we have based on the best information. And if somebody comes to us and says, you have really $1 million in there, you could do it, then I think we would have done it, you know?
I
Simple as
understand that, and I'm not saying that by any means the work should not have been done. That is not what I'm saying. That, to me, that's a total separate discussion. Of course, it should have been done. People need safe roads. That is not where I'm coming from. I'm just saying from a financial management point of view, that's what I see, is that we could manage it in-house, that we have cash, so.
Any other, yes, Chuck?
Can I ask, just as a taxpayer?
Yep.
So I'm confused why it's different now with this situation than it was with the town hall situation, where the board tried to use money to finish the town hall, and the budget got stopped, town meeting got put back, it was a whole mess, and now it's okay. And what's the difference? That's all I'm
This is an
asking.
emergency, so
Okay.
that was, you went to the voters and asked to spend something you weren't budgeting for. This is also doing that, however, it's an emergency, you can't not
Well,
fix
it
those
is,
things.
we got the money, we borrowed the money, so it's really not an emergency. We're good for now. If we didn't have a way to pay for it, then it's an emergency, but we've got the money.
But you didn't have a way, you didn't have authorization from the taxpayers to borrow that money. So really, you didn't have permission to do
the question.
in the big, but it was an emergency, it had to be done. That, I don't think anyone will argue with that, but it's,
That's the difference.
it
That's
is, it's
your
the
difference. Okay.
permission of what you're using that money for. If it's a planned expense, in my eyes, that you know is gonna happen,
But it's not an emergency,
right,
right?
you know?
Best
and you-
scenario, we discussed it, if we were gonna spend 300,000 to fix this up, that's not, but if all of a sudden the roof caved in and we had a water leak, we're gonna just go fix the roof and go back and
Right.
tell the voters we had to fix the roof, but we
Right.
didn't
Fair
put the
enough,
money.
I was
Yeah,
just curious.
that's, I would say, in my eyes, that's the difference between, of using that
Okay.
and using those funds. And the town I came from, they did go to the voters and ask to borrow money from ourselves to do a paving project. So when they planned a paving project in advance, knowing we had cash, and asked the voters, and so the auditors agreed to it, actually Sullivan and Powers. We just had to have an official note written with an official interest rate. And we had to budget those payments into the budget every year. There was no way around it. They were gonna move that payment. If we didn't pay ourselves that money back, that fund didn't get that money back, the audit would make an adjustment to do that. So there's a formal process that you can borrow when it's a planned project from yourself. So it's like borrowing from your savings to pay something at your house. And you know you gotta pay that back, but you're borrowing it and gonna pay it back. And the system tracks that. It's not like we're doing something and we gotta remember, or we're not being upfront. This is what this due to, due from does for you. It tracks it in the system. You know, your revenue from the line of credit is gonna send that FEMA fund, but the expenses are gonna be paid out of your general fund. It's gonna go between this due to, due from. You can see it on this. Forget what for, no, that's the ARPA. So one of these funds has your, how much? Why is that 20 fund not showing here? I don't know. So,
But the scenario is just like a lot of companies, you can borrow against your 401. In other words, you actually have the money there, you don't want to take it out, but you want to borrow against your 401 and pay it back. And it's almost what you're saying. It's just, it really is not our money, but until we actually go out and get it, but we had set it aside.
and the cash is all we're talking. So it's a little hard. Think of cash as separate. Cash is cash. The revenue is still being recognized in the fund it belongs to. So that never goes away. It gets recognized there. You can't get away from that. We're not saying, oh, this is general fund revenue and cash. No, we're recognizing the revenue in the fund it belongs to. So there's no way that that fund can't prove that it earned that money because we're booking it there. It's just the cash piece that's sitting in your general fund. It's a little, I know it's a little funny to think of it, but think of those as two separate things that are happening.
Very good. Any other questions? Public?
I just have one
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
To go back, Darlene, to, this, and I didn't understand this, the expenses for animal control line.
Oh, I didn't see anything booked there, so I don't know how the animal control works,
It goes to the
honestly, in
sheriff,
town.
right? Is that,
That's
now it's in
correct.
the sheriff's,
But it should have its own line item.
It does have its own line item, there's just nothing booked there, so
Oh.
I'm like, maybe we haven't done anything. I don't know how that works, if it's per incident, or is it something we pay them on a monthly basis? It was just an expense that there's no expenditure there for it yet this year.
It's a brand new,
Yeah, we just voted for that.
Yeah.
it's brand new. It started July.
maybe it's included
I
in the
thought they
sheriff's
had
one?
billed us, but maybe they haven't billed us yet.
Yeah, so that was just another
Yeah.
expenditure, there was
Okay.
nothing spent yet,
Maybe
so
check
I
on that and see what the
didn't know.
deal is.
Yeah, see if we
Yeah, for free.
get it out of the window.
Go ahead, Chuck.
I also noticed other towns, when they receive a grant, whether it's grants and aid or Better Roads grant or whatever, they'll create a separate line item for that grant.
Yep.
For
Yep.
total transparency of
Yep.
what's going on.
I like that, or even a separate fund that's grants and aid fund, so it's, again, out of your regular, everyday operating budget. We're talking two different things. I think your highway should be just your everyday operating highway stuff that's transparent to the taxpayers. This is what highway is. All this other stuff they do, but there's potential, there's grant money that comes from that, so that when you're not overspent in something that's related to the grant, it's represented in the grant fund, not your everyday operating fund. That's, and
But it's right there where it can be connected easily, where you're not.
your revenues and your expenses all sit there. They're out of your budget completely, so you're not,
So like in Rockingham, it's all within the highway budget. They've got a line item for
Yep.
that grant, whatever, so as you're reading down through it.
You
so
could
they
do
can
that.
Easily see it. It's not, you're
Yep.
page 20, and then when everybody's at town meeting, they go, oh, okay, page 82 is this, and then you gotta go back, and then
Yep.
everybody's lost it, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
or
The
it's a
expense
complete one.
might be a little squirrely, but your revenues, we've done that right along.
Your expenses should be able to go that way too. The only thing
I'm
that
just saying,
wouldn't is your in-kind
I'm just
labor.
looking at your
Yep,
26-page,
yep,
and it's very clear, state grant, West Road, Hartley Hill Road grant,
but I
state aid
think
to
Chuck's saying
highways.
is he has to go here and then he has to look 3 pages back to see
on an expenditure
expenditure
page.
on where
which
if
is-
it was in his budget like this, he's gonna be able to see
It would go at the
like
top here
this.
under these revenue
Right.
Right, and he's gonna be able to go right down here into a section that says grant.
And not
and
so
he's
much
gonna-
me, I can rifle back and forth, but not everybody that goes to town meetings is accountant.
But let's just take for a scenario, it wasn't always grant. The voters approved $37,000 to spend on Henwood Hill Road.
Correct.
We would have had a line item under 102, 37,000 on a revenue. And then as his expenditure just kept eating that up under that guard, it was, at least you knew that, hey, we expended, out of 37, we've actually used 25 of it on it.
And somebody could ask you, where'd that money go? And you'd be able to answer them.
Exactly. So it doesn't have to be grant, it's just earmarked. You're earmarking the money.
Right.
When we go to the voters and we specifically ask whether it's paving or do roads, and we actually do it, we actually should be keeping track of that. Hey, we told them paving is gonna be this, we told them Henwood Hill is gonna be this much, we would just put that money aside, even though it's in part of the general fund.
Any other questions or observations, general public? Before I move on, I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done. And just say, and thank everyone for their input, Chuck, especially what you brought up. We set out last year to create a collaborative finance processing manual and enabled our tremendous strategic partner who is in front of us this evening in order to make sure we got accuracy, transparency, so we could get best execution. So our taxpayers know what we did, why we did it, and it was clear. And as Chuck just said, it's easy for everyone to understand. And with Darlene Kelly's presentation tonight, this is part of that process that we set out to. And I think we've come a long way, and we'll continue to move that forward thanks to your leadership and help. And that we have this discussion in a public forum as we do, so everyone can go back and look at the record that we did speak about it and that we're going through this. So this is an excellent set of recommendations. I would make the suggestion that we take this under consideration, but burden you to come back to the next meeting and then have everyone take a look at this so we can digest it and then have a good discussion about this at our next meeting.
This was very good.
Outstanding.
I just figured it's a little easier, not everybody's a numbers person, and that narrative maybe would help calm it down a bit.
The whole objective here is for us to get better.
Right, and to be a little more transparent and make it easy for all taxpayers. I'm a taxpayer as well, and I think that's important because it scares people when they see numbers. They're not numbers people. I am. That's just me, so I understand that. So I'm trying to figure out ways to explain it, and I think the more we explain it, I think the more it makes sense, and so that's my goal.
Terrific. Well, thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for your partnership.
Sure.
Seeing no other questions, we will move on, and thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business E, 7/29/21 storm progress update.
So all the contractors are done.
Okay.
We're just grading and kind of finished touches, but we're pretty much through it. Of course, we got little washes here and there that we're gonna be, unfortunately, probably years, catching up with every little thing. But all the major stuff is done and we're good. Which a couple months ago, if we had snow, we'd be in trouble. Where now we're in good shape.
So we're back to a regular
Is that
schedule
Henwood
there.
Hill as well?
What's that?
Henwood Hill as well?
Henwood Hill, Henwood Hill is the only thing left, it's actually covered bridge
Yeah,
road,
covered bridge, right.
right, we gotta be careful. So it went out to bid, we only had 2 contractors bid on it. It was awarded to Adams Trucking, and they said by the end of December, it would be done, is that right?
That's correct.
So it
Okay.
should be open by the end of December.
Okay.
And we have one more that we're in the process, talking with V-Trans, which is School Street intersection. We don't want to drop that.
About
And if we get-
upgrading the.
Right.
I
But
see
we
it.
want FEMA involved in our discussion about that.
Which is
That road.
also other grant
Russell.
possibilities if that doesn't work
But
out.
I think, Chuck, what you're saying is everything that the town highway is going to do is done.
Correct.
Like,
Well,
that's
and
definitely-
everything other
No.
than what we actually put out to bid is done. And
That's,
yeah, School Street could use a bigger culvert and all that, but until, I mean, it's functioning to where it was before the storm right now.
We're
Should be
still
upgraded.
grading. We still have roads that are not finished in the FEMA process. They
They're just
have to
gonna be
go back
graded.
and grade.
Everything
So
from,
no, that you're.
everything from Hidden Springs
But he started
north
out,
to Saxon River needs to be still graded, which we're working on.
but that's your crew, what I guess
That's
I'm
my
saying.
crew, correct.
Outside of the one you just missed, it may be another one, any of the projects that would be going to bid are
We're
either
done.
out or we're all done, we're not going to do
That's
anymore.
correct.
Okay.
For this year.
For-
We have Piggery Road we still want to look into
From the
That's
storm.
accurate.
from the
Well,
storm.
Yeah.
Where we're very narrow and we've got a damaged culvert.
Oh, the box culvert issue, or the one
Whether
that,
it's a box or bridge.
right.
John Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the comment on School Street, we'll probably discuss that later on because there's a grant, the one I'm working on, that gives the town up to $300,000. But there's a process for these grants at V-Trans, and I spoke with Scott at V-Trans about this, so I'll go into more detail on that one. But my question I had on Henwood Hill, what is the cost for that mitigation?
No.
What do you, it was 30 and change, right?
You talk about Adams that won the bid.
Yeah, we gave it to you last meeting. It could be in the minutes.
I was just referring to the contract you mentioned that you put out to bid in the e-card or something, or just what Chuck just mentioned.
Buck
Two bid-
Adam
two bid-
on,
Was it 20?
Covered Bridge Road, you mean?
Was it 20?
Yeah. The one you were just talking about, Chuck, sorry.
It was, what was it? I'm trying to remember now. It was like 37 something, right?
That's what I would have gone with, but I'm hoping it would be.
Upwards of $40,000, let's say, is what was bid on it.
Okay, all right, okay.
That next
Thank you.
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I can confirm that. If
Oh,
you-
no worries. I'll bring it up later on scoping and stuff under the V-Trans grants, but no worries. I thought it was a bigger dollar amount because we were doing work up there from a approved article, but not a problem.
Okay. Any more questions or observations on the storm? Last comment, thank you to Chuck Lawrence, Jason Perry, Russ Hodgkins, and others for educating this citizen and saying that, I just wanted this to be on the record for folks that watch this during the week, that what happens in a storm like this that I didn't understand is we actually get a good look at what part of our infrastructure is not only derelict, but needs to be fixed, and the priorities that the folks I mentioned do their best that they can to try and identify how to fix them, the best way to do it. The main issue, though, is money. It takes money to do this, and the budget is only so large, but they're out there every day, and this storm definitely highlighted a lot of work that needs to be done in our infrastructure, and I wanted to thank them not only for the education, but for all the hard work they're doing out there every day, especially in the successful mitigation of the damage. So thank you. Unfinished business, 5-year capital plan. I would move that we, given the large agenda we had tonight, I would move that we table that. Unless someone has an objection.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so we're going to table that again. I apologize for that, but we're trying to prioritize the time limit that we have. And then moving on to unfinished business G, FY23 budget review discussion, pages 2 and 3. Why don't we at least do page 2?
I'd like to draw your attention to page 1 first.
Okay.
We do have one update, and I tried to break it out the best I could. It's health insurance. MVP, again, below all others, is going up 1.5% this year, which is great. But that is only half of our year. So as I do every year for you, I broke it out for what we have for town employees and what they're getting for benefits of health insurance, what it would cost per month, total remaining for the half year at the 1.5%, excuse me. And then I totaled the second half year at a 10% increase to cover all bases, whether we change a member of our work crew that changes from single to married or whatever, covering just a little bit of a freeboard on the second half a year, which is there's a very big guess on everybody's part at this point. So looking at it, we do have a realistic number for the FY23 budget of $176,250. Does have to make a note that we still, employees pay that 20% of our spouses and families. So this increase is not just town, it is employee also. So but that number is realistic now. If it is your pleasure, I can put it in, or if you want to discuss it further, or.
Looks good to me.
That also should be stated that it's also dental and the small life insurance policy the town carries on each employee.
Since I've been on the board also, since we're on page 1, we have consistently utilized the Social Security Administration of the United States federal government, which conservatively pays out $64 million of our fellow taxpayers' Social Security benefits that we're all entitled to at some point in our lives. And I just want to, on the record, that you, for fiscal 2022, cost of adjustment, COLA adjustment has actually moved up, highest I've seen it, to 5.9%. I believe we discussed a 3% adjustment. These are kind of big numbers in a very unique situation. I just wanted to bring that back up because we have consistently, at least since I've been here, been following that moving number, because that's a number from a very solid standard.
Are you thinking of an increase higher than 3%?
I think it is wise to stay as close to the COLA number as possible. I'm just making that recommendation as a fellow, and not just as a member of the board, but as a fellow taxpayer.
With the final decision still being in June.
Right.
So
Right.
we'll have a better grasp at what it really is, not what they're estimating right
This
now.
would, what the trouble is, when we budget 6%, we always have a hard time not giving employees 6%. It really is hard because they see that you put it in the budget. That's the difficult part.
I can only disagree so many years in a row. No one expects anything but what you give them. Nobody comes up and says, I see 6, why is it 3? You do what you need to do, and the waiting till June totally makes sense, and in everybody's eyes too.
Please.
So as a resident taxpayer, I don't agree with that. I expect to, when I vote on a budget that includes that, that's what I expect the town to be giving their employees. I voted, you asked me, why would you not pay them what I voted on? So that's just my personal opinion. It bugged me a couple of years ago when that happened. They feel like you came, that's what you presented to vote, we voted and agreed upon it, you're not short, you have a fund balance. I think that's.
So what happens, and I've been on the board when this happened, where we put in like say 2% and it skyrocketed like, so when we got to it, we didn't honor the 2%, we went to the 4% because it was only fair. Under that argument, you would go back, sorry, I can't give it to you because we already asked the permission from the voters to only give you 2%.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yep.
wrong with that argument.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So we've always been it this way only because we were trying to protect them from the other way. And saying that, okay, if we put in 3% and we end up going to his 5.9, it's a long ways down the road. We would still honor that because we go back to where we always try to treat them fair, that even though we didn't guess right, we're still gonna treat them right, is where I came from. So if we put 3% and in the past it's only been 2.1, we have done that sometimes because we're going like some system we have to follow which way it is, and we're just putting a budget number in there. And that's all we're discussing tonight, whether it's 5.9 or 3, is putting enough money in there to
Right.
cover it.
So, I mean, I think one way to make it fairer to both ways is if, for instance, we ask for 5%. It turns out it's 3%. So we have overtaxed the taxpayer 2%. If we take that 2%, whatever it turns out to be, and give it back to the taxpayers the next year, it somewhat makes it a little bit fairer. But
Right.
it's complicated.
It is
still.
complicated, and last year was the first time I heard voters come back to us that there were certain employees in the building that didn't get the raise. You owed it to them because you told us we're gonna do it. And I'm going like, yeah, we did ask, we asked for a lot of things, but when the time came, we did what we thought. We went by the same system every time, that whatever it was, we will treat you fair. Same with insurance. We could lock into the whole year and say, this is what we're gonna give for the whole year, and then we come back and said, hey, the second half of the year, it goes up, it's too bad, that's they gotta absorb it. So we tried to treat them, to me, when you're treating employees, you treat them the same every year. Because a lot of them don't look at the budget, just like Russ says, they don't see what it is, they just hope that we're gonna treat them fair.
Yeah, I just don't agree with the incentive for an employee. So, and my other question is, do you ever offer an opt-out option for their insurance?
We just did this with Pauline.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know that.
No, I didn't see her
Just
health insurance.
Just
so-
happened.
Okay.
Yes, you were the one who found that we.
No,
were
that's her
paying
VEMR's was wrong.
Oh, okay, sorry, my
Yeah,
mistake.
her VEMR's was
But
being
yes,
taxed.
she just got, help me out, what's the
Social Security.
Social Security?
Yeah.
And it was much cheaper than,
Yep.
Basically, we would be
she-
buying a supplemental plan.
Yeah.
You know,
But do you offer that to other
we have
employees
done
that have a
it,
spouse?
since
that
I've
works
been
somewhere
here,
else?
we've done it, yes, with 3 or 4 people going back as far as
Because it's gonna be a
Doreen.
huge savings. to
It was,
the town.
Doreen actually treated us really well on that, same thing, so far it's been the people who actually come to us and said, here's your choice, if I can go on, if you want to do that, and so I think they all been real fair about that, so yes.
It can be a huge savings.
Yeah.
I was just curious if that was something.
I have another comment on page 1. So this would be under probably computer contract services. So this IT stuff is basically for the computer system. But as you know, we're upgrading our website, doing a new website, and Russ Lazarek unfortunately died before he could finish that. Yvette has gotten the login information for us. So I'd like to, well, 2 things. Maybe this is separate. Before then, I'd like to find some money to have a computer expert migrate that website over. But in this budget, we don't really have anyone in the town hall who's able to, or has time or whatever, wants to do anything with the website. So I would really like to be able to hire someone, or as a contractor, for maybe $5,000 to make sure that our website is kept up to date. I mean, we really need to come into the 21st century. So that's my recommendation, that we put in perhaps $5,000. I don't really know.
I'm shocked that it's not in the cheat sheet.
I don't see a contract.
What do you mean the cheat sheet notes?
I always put what the line item is for, and I was looking for website. And I don't see it.
Well, we don't really
It's
have
not
a
under-
website item,
It's
right?
not under computers contracted services. That is strictly our server, our fraud protection and all that.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure quite where we put it.
I don't,
It
I'm
does.
sorry, I would just need to look at where,
Uh-huh.
I'm 100% for it. It's so important. You know, we could spend, the more we spend on it, the less we could spend on advertising on the paper and getting out all that. It's just a great advertisement for our town that we should be using even more. So
Yeah.
yes, and I think,
if you decide on the amount, I can find where it's supposed to be. You don't remember on top of your
It
head?
probably needs a separate line item. I encourage that stuff to be separated versus
yeah,
put in so that you can see web design
I
as
think,
an
and
expense.
that would be pushing hard to make a separate line, just in case we cancel the contract.
Yeah, sure.
Then we would actually know that, okay, we're not, that money doesn't go in general fund and it gets lost.
So you renumber all the numbers essentially.
Yeah,
Or you just add an account,
Yeah.
you know, you can
Yeah,
add an
right.
account when it's
Right.
in a unique expense like that, I would encourage you not to couple it in with miscellaneous stuff, because
Mhm.
an auditor doesn't like that. I don't like that as a taxpayer. I want to see what's in that number.
Can-
So I
I'm-
encourage you to keep it separate.
I'm happy to do that, and I suggest $5,000, that's my suggestion.
have you done any research to see that,
I have not, but I will.
It's a tentative number, we can start with
Yeah,
that.
start with that, and I will, and I had just heard, because I wasn't quite sure what Yvette was gonna do about it, or if she could
I've
do
been-
more, but,
I've been behind that from day one, that
Yeah.
there's so many companies that all these towns are doing where they don't have, especially
Yeah.
all the small towns, and they have a pretty nice looking web face page that's being updated and taken care of, and it's the very bottom that has the contractor who actually
Right.
maintaining it.
yeah, and I think, Russ did a very good job on designing it. I think
He did.
maintaining it would not take a huge amount of time. So I'll look into it and give you more information.
Thank you, Sue.
Mhm.
Is, I don't know if now's the time, now, to speak about IT stuff, my computer at the shop goes back, it comes out of the same budget? Same line item? You bought my laptop and,
We have a computer expense.
so what I'm looking for is a tablet that can connect to, have cell phone capability for doing, the MRGP inventory. So, familiar? So all these roads have segments hydrologically
Yeah,
connected.
no,
We go through, we do, so they're connected through GPS, they've got maps right through Wyndham Regional, and,
Do a little more research, they came out with some really good e-pads, that's what you do while you're there, you're taking a picture of
those
it.
were, I coming from this, from the road foreman's meeting I just came
Right.
from before I came here, that's where.
So that would be a one-time expense?
Yes.
Right.
You pay a
Other
little bit of a
than
cell service fee.
the cell service
That's-
fee.
Yeah, this is cell
Other
service.
than the
Uh-huh.
cell service fee.
But basically, you go out, you take a picture of it, and then it instantly becomes a document, and then it basically just follows
Yeah.
through, and it really is.
Because they've already done the mapping, you're standing right there beside it, you're
Yeah.
doing it, and,
Yeah, when you were doing that FEMA, it really is a big help.
for all
Yeah.
that stuff, it's kind of huge.
Yeah.
That's the direction everybody's headed in.
Right. Page one, anything else?
You did a terrible job on page 2 so far, though.
So just to remind you, blue is what you have, what has been confirmed or just needs your stamp of approval. Red, we're still waiting for information.
Can you come back to us with a number and all the 3% change them to 5 so we can see how much dollars it is?
I can surely do that.
Just my input, so,
5% even?
I think so.
Any other questions on page 2? Anyone?
I guess just one question, I guess this might be for you, Darlene. So this is the assistant treasurer, this is your salary here
Through NEMRIC, yes.
through NEMRIC, but then there's also a line item for NEMRIC. So How does that?
I'm
work?
not paid, directly, I'm paid through Nemrick pays me.
Okay,
You pay
so-
Nemrick, so I
Okay,
think that might be a little bit of Kelly.
Where are you
Is-
at?
I am at,
What page?
I am on page
Page
2, down,
Where's
down,
the red
down.
tent?
Right.
The
Wages,
No, right here.
assistant town
Assistant
treasurer.
treasurer.
Whose wages are those?
That's hers.
But she's paid by Nemrick, so we don't,
But again, we would pay a portion of her billings to us as assistant treasurer when she fills in for Paul.
right,
And when she's doing the reconciliations and all that, we come
right.
out of the regular NIMRIC line, like it always has.
Okay?
I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah,
It's,
and it just is odd, kind of to me.
It is odd.
Instead of just a contracted services in the treasurer.
Any way of making it less
Department.
odd?
It would actually,
I would just say contracted services in the
that's what I was-
treasurer, but, I mean, and knowing in the future, if you're going to assign back an assistant treasurer, then you need to potentially bring that back into your budget. But I would just call it contracted services for the treasurer position.
even though in this case, we actually appointed your name to it, if you were to get done with that company, we would just change the name.
I know you made the agreement with Nemrick, not me, I
Right.
believe, is my understanding, so that if I left Nemrick, someone else from Nemrick's
Someone else
coming
would
out
step in.
in
Did we
here, so
actually
it's
end up
not
voting that
me.
way? I think that's what we were confused over. Did
right.
we actually go back? I thought we actually appointed her as assistant town treasurer because of,
Cynthia was pretty adamant that it
Yeah.
was going to be NIMRIC, because if Kelly, Darlene, stepped aside, then they would just fill that. the
I know
shoes without
originally we
too
were
much
gonna,
makeup.
appoint her, but then I just make clear.
She is, her name is on our sign sheets and all that good stuff.
But the money comes out of them.
Is billed through Nemrick, I don't get paid outside, Nemrick
Right.
pays.
Right, so what happens to this $3,000? That gets paid to Nemrick?
That's what Paul had assumed, that when he was gone on vacation and she stepped in to do
That she-
payroll, whatever,
Uh-huh,
that we would pay it out of that line to NIMRIC, of course,
uh-huh,
but
I
So,
see.
Let me fall through so I am a little more confused again. But if we were paying her, she didn't have to be paid the benefits of social security and everything. But because we're paying NIMRIC, we're paying whatever NIMRIC
Contracted
is.
service.
So that should be contract service, not wages.
Mhm.
that's correct.
Okay, I just want to be the same thing.
So can we make that, we'll make that happen.
You can make a line item for contracted services, if that's where you would like to see it. as
We already
one
have
chunk.
that.
Okay,
Monthly reconciliation. It's in red because Ernie hasn't got back to us yet.
Up here.
And
Okay.
so what you're saying is get rid of the 3,000 and put it into that
It
line?
looks like we're paying somebody $15 an hour. It looks like there's somebody on our payroll when it's really contract service. That's why I would like
That
to
was
see
the
it.
note from the last
I know,
person.
I
This
just-
just changed,
yeah.
so
Okay, fine, that's why we're here.
just
Why
wanted
we're
to
here.
make sure you guys knew what it was. So we'll strike that, leave it blank. Is that what you're after?
Contracted
move that.
services.
Dollars to contracted services.
Yes.
Well, no, it'd still be under line item, the same line item, except it would be contract services, because.
You already have one of those, Craig, up at the top.
I know, but it's broken down to the treasurer's department. It's gotta be broken into the treasurer department as assistant. So it is that line item, it's the right one, but it says, you could just say contract service assistant treasurer, and that's the dollar amount. Same line item.
What's your thought?
yeah, I would move it down under the treasurer, because that's the department I'm assisting, in my opinion.
So you'd move that whole $10,000 line down
No,
to the
Wait.
assistant treasurer line.
So you're the only person from Nemrick that works for us?
Right now, yep, if I was to leave Nemrick, or if I got ill, and
Uh-huh.
you needed somebody from Nemrick, probably Penny, because
Right.
she's done it before,
Right,
would step in and do some of my duties
Right.
till I was able to do them again or such, yep.
okay, so that $10,000.
So right now, it's under executive department. It's got a line item, contracted services, and it's NIMRIC monthly reconciliation.
But to me, I'm not helping you, really, I'm doing the department I vision myself in is treasury. So treasurer would has those expenses, not to me, not the
Well,
general admin people.
I guess I could put my 2 cents back in there again. We had $10,000 up there in executive, but on this assistant town treasurer, that 3,000, so it's a total of 13,000 we're paying it. The 3,000, I didn't have a problem with earmarking, that's to help specifically that town treasurer, and that's a different duty than the 10,000, because you're specifically helping him do that job. I was for leaving it to 3,000, just changing it from $15 an hour to contract service with NEMRIC.
But what am I doing for $10,000 to help the admin department?
That's a longer, different discussion, I guess.
Right.
Right, because really what I'm doing is your financial stuff. To
Right.
me, that's the treasurer.
So when we
position,
find
not
out what
the admin
NEMRIC is,
position.
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yep, no.
Once we find out what NEMRIC is charging us, 10,000, say, we would put that under,
A one in front of that 3.
we would be put it down here under treasurer's office, only say contracted services assistant town treasurer, and make that 10,000, say.
So then at that point, we were gonna actually put more money, we're gonna ask the voters for more money in the treasurer's department and less in the contractors executive session.
Yes.
Is that right?
But why are you asking them? It's all part of your general fund, right? So
No,
you're just moving it from one, yeah, it's all part of your general fund. You're just moving it from one section of your financials to the other. It's all part of your general fund still. You don't ask individually them to vote on your admin, them to vote on this, them to vote on that.
No, but when they look at it.
When they
that's
look
gonna
at
be
it.
Right.
they look at it.
Right, so it's just moving, it's in total the same amount of money. It's
Mhm.
just
But there's-
reclassifying it so it's more departmental.
Right,
Yeah.
and there's
You know?
$3,000
In my mind, your
less.
town is departmental.
But
And
the
we should
contractual
treat it that
line
way.
that we've been doing, that was started at 12,000, 9,000, 7,000, 6,000, now it's at 10,000. We're following that through. That's what we've been hiring your company to do. This line item down here was a person that wasn't working for your company that we had set money aside. Now we're saying it's the same position, doing the same job. It's just that we're actually paying NEMRIC for that service. That's all we're saying. We're not paying $15 an hour, 3 hours. a
Right,
week.
yes, I agree with that. I
Okay.
just think that the
So are you
services-
gonna leave the 3,000, are we leaving the $3,000 under salary and wages for salary, for the treasurer's office under a contract service?
No, what I understood is the 10,000, that contractor certain executive, it would just be zeroed out for this year.
I'm comfortable.
Then under the treasurer it would say contracted services assistant treasurer, $10,000 or,
13.
It'd be 13.
okay,
Yeah,
so
the
that
two
was my
together.
question, right?
But we aren't positive of that number. It's
Yeah,
still
no, I
in-
understand, yeah.
Still
yeah,
in
yeah.
red.
I understand that.
So
Well, can you come back to us, Darlene, look at that again and come back to us on this sheet?
I've not
Right.
been involved in that, so
Yeah.
yep, but I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you just look at it, I think you would see that, we just don't want to think that we're hiring somebody for $15 an hour.
Right, I don't think it should be labeled salary by any means, I can
Right.
tell you
Mhm.
that. That I don't think is transparent.
Right,
I
so,
think it's exactly what's happening. It looks as if it's a salary. To me,
Right.
that whole should just be a contracted service.
I
so
think
they
we're all on the
understand.
same page as Matt. If you took a look at it, come back to us and figure out what's the best way to explain to the voters what we're doing with that 13,000.
Any other questions on page 2? Might as well just rip off page 3 is where we're at it, so let's go to it. Any questions?
You know, can you go back to just real quick? What does it mean by new person? I don't understand that. Well, $600 is nothing, but what does it mean by new person? The bottom of page 2.
we were assuming we were gonna have a new treasurer, so I can remove that also.
Okay.
A new assistant treasurer, excuse me.
Page 3.
This will be a regular audit, so there's a deduction there. Again, the assessment firm is NEMRIC, will be getting their fee for that. The listers was bumped that 3% that we talked about. The CAMA costs, that charge is also got to be discussed with NEMRIC. It went up last year a small amount, but this year they said there was going to be a significant charge, and I'm not sure why. So I'll need to talk to them about that. What's that?
What is CAMA?
It is our program for our listers, to add the real estate values in.
Okay.
So, and there's an update, I think, that's coming this year, so that's why it's in red. We will get that. I left the new member for listers because we're still hoping for the 3rd. We have a temporary right now. She's done in December, which she's worked out very, very well for us. She's done a very good job. Planning board, I have not yet talked to them about their budget. That's why it's in red. But it shouldn't change much. They do have a town plan that's due next year, so there will be publishing fees that we will have to account for.
Any other questions on page 3? Okay.
I like the changes, and
And then we'll start again at our next meeting. So thank you, everyone, for your input.
You're gonna adjust that line item for the listers to 5% too, right?
I will do all of them. I'm not honestly sure how I'm gonna do it. Leave the one that's there now, and then put on the cheat line the new
I'd
number.
rather come in with a higher price than we can say, let's cut it back.
Okay, all right, so I'll reverse it.
Thank
I'll
you.
put the 3 on the side and 5 in the budget line.
Anything else?
Thank you.
No, good job.
Okay. Thank you for everyone's input. Okay, now we're moving on to new business, discussion and action. A, noise exemption
That
action.
was asked to be removed.
Okay, that's out. And B, State of Vermont, ACCD opportunity. Mr. John Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Select Board. So I reached out to Mr. Randall Schultz, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. And I did invite him to the meeting this evening, but he sent an email saying that this is just not a good time of the week for him. So my question was to see the need or the value to the community to have this ACCD. And his response was, it's an overwhelming opportunity for us to establish this type of a committee because it does help provide outreach possibilities, and it helps with the ED, and it helps understand, it takes a lot of the workload off from you folks so that they can feed back in for projects like community development and grant opportunities and just to stabilize your economic infrastructure. And why this is important, if we look at it in a bigger picture, if we have this type of a board, as other towns do, there's a manual going to be hopefully produced by the end of this year for towns, kind of as a guide. This will help us ensure that we are doing community development projects that align with not only our forward thinking, but also our neighboring communities. And that's kind of the support structure that the WRC does as well. So I feel in my response to him that this is a value for the community to have. And I said, I think our select board and full-time members feel that's the case as well. And so it's kind of back to you folks if you want to proceed to establish this committee to help work on these projects. And I believe this would be a ongoing committee that would be just like our planning commission, our zoning, and et cetera. So that's where we are, and the state feels it's a good opportunity for us to establish this. So I can forward all the emails over so you folks have those for record. And that's really all I have on that for now. I just kind of take your feedback and what you feel you folks want to do.
Yes, sir.
Question. So how would this must in some way overlap with SEVIDS and the Brattleboro Community Development?
Yes, ma'am. My understanding is SEVIDS and BDCC have a pretty integral role in sort of some legal commitment in this area to help us in the services they provide to us. And I know WRC has their boards, their planning commissions, et cetera, and they have some as well. And I didn't go too deep on the roles and responsibilities until I came back to you folks to see which direction you wanted to move in. So, so broadly, yeah, to answer your question, they do, and maybe we can get those folks to come to the table and explain to us in more detail if you folks want to.
But yeah, thank you, John.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess I just make a comment. I mean, it sounds like a good idea. I would worry a little, we have a hard time already filling the boards that we have for volunteers, but.
I believe one opportunity we could look at, oh, sorry, I believe one opportunity we could look at with the boards that are already established, if they want to take on this and make them make elements of, so like our zoning, we take one member. I think the town manager did speak to this point, that we can compile that with people that are already committed to working on these projects. So just a thought.
No, and it's a good thought, and, Sue's concern is mine as well regarding redundancy, and then the ability to track membership. However, I like what you're doing in the sense of, for leaving money on the table, and we should not be leaving money on the table that's qualitative for the things we're doing, then anything that works at getting more money is what we should be doing. So how many people would you need this board to be, John? You envision this board should look like?
My vision would be a 5-member board, but I think we can do 3 to satisfy if we have a restrictive number that want to participate. And again, I'm just following up on the email sent to the state, to the town on this matter. This is their kind of recommendation. And if we look at this in a bigger picture, this board would interact with other programs that we seek, and it could be transportation grants and stuff like that. It's a bigger picture. We request it all the way to the top, and they support us from the top-down approach with these resources and funding. So that's the understanding for the ACCD that other towns are using. So it's up to you folks. It's a recommendation from the state, and I researched it a little bit, and it's totally up to you which direction you want to move in.
Let me ask you this. Can you, for the next meeting, contact, at least get in coordination with, at least contact Sevitz and talk a little bit about, redundancy and what you're thinking? I also like the idea of utilizing our existing our existing commissions. We have multiple commissions, and one person off that for this board when it's seeking clearly, as you've clearly stated, is available resources. Those resources are available, and they're there for us to acquire, correct?
Correct. And so one of the things that WRC does with their commissioners is you take on board responsibilities. So we get assigned these things that we have to work on, like transportation, emergency planning. And then the executive board appoints chairs of certain boards, and they have their executive board members from different committees, and then they come together. So if there's overlap, they can communicate that with the executive board, which is essentially the select board in this situation. So yeah, I feel it's a great opportunity. How we structure it, I don't know what that will look like if
we come back, please, to the next meeting with a structure of how many people. Okay. Think about those boards, whether that's planning commission, zoning, DRB, whatever, who would be the most effective, right? And already on that board, so you probably would find someone willing to do it. And then come back to us with a structure, and also talk to Sevitz, and then we'll go from there. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful. And do you folks want me to include BDCC in this? Sevitz and BDCC have different.
Absolutely.
Okay. Very well. And I will also reach out to WRC for some input, because they work in this space very fluently.
John, can you come for my information and what I'd like to see? I don't like to invent something. Can you come back with a couple of towns who actually have a committee? They're comparable size of not a big city or not a little town that actually already has this up and running, and maybe that we can.
Absolutely. I will definitely do that for you in comparison, so we can see where we stand.
You've talked to somebody and this is what it worked and this is how it works, and we follow. Thank you.
Yep, I will definitely do that for you folks.
Okay, thank you. Any more input on that?
I'm all set for now.
Okay, working new business, John Jones Transportation Grant.
Okay, this one's a little more involved, and maybe we can just touch on it and move it to the next meeting at some point here. In the packet, I think you folks received a grant opportunity email from VTrans. It should be an email that was sent from me to the town manager, and it's the generator of this was the transportation full-time staff member at WRCU sent it out, who I think Chuck actually met with today in the foreman's meetings in Dummerston. So I spoke with Scott Robertson is his name. He works for VTrans. And one of the things about this grant, this is the one where it's every year, it's $300,000. There is a cost match for the town if we go to the full scope. But one of the things I did ask about a list, if we have that, and why I spoke on School Street before was I think this is a good opportunity to apply before the deadline to get scoping funding for School Street. We can have it engineered, meet all the parameters, and then next year apply to do the work. And this is any project we do. This is just how this program works. And so I don't think we have the time to apply for it because the application is long and the requirements are available through different agencies, but I don't know if we have the time to pull a project together before November 24th at this point, but we could definitely do the scoping. And so that's where we are on that. And if you folks want to move forward on applying for scoping money, and if we want to use the School Street project, I just haven't got anything back from anybody on my email, what your wish lists are or anything. And Chuck, if you have something, please help me out here.
Would that make more sense, School Street, than Biggery Road for that kind of money?
Again, he was talking about scoping, so
No, I
scoping is
understand.
just an engineering study. We
Right,
don't
but
need
the
that on
overall
School
grant
Street.
over the end of the day,
We don't need that on School Street.
the engineering stuff. I just said,
Yeah.
would it make more sense to do Biggery Road than School
What is
Street?
the
because-
percentage, John?
75%, 25%. So we're looking at probably 75,000. We're going to get 300,000. They pay for scoping. So any project, and if we're going to do project, it's strongly encouraged, and I have the specifications here, that we do a scoping for our project, whether we're going to manage them at the town platform or we're going to seek contractors. And why this is important when we look at roads and stuff, we have a washout and it washes out, and we go to FEMA and say, hey, we want reimbursement here. They're going to go down through their checklist and say, well, when you guys did the work, did you check these boxes? And we can say, yes, we did. We had an engineer tell us this is what we need to do. They paid us the money to do it. And we don't have to pay for that service, and it helps support us all the way up through the chain. So right now with the timeline on this specific grant, I think we could probably pull together a scoping study request with the state of Vermont and work on a project. I just need you folks to identify one, and it's quite a bit of money here. So I think these projects are supportive of having all the right people weigh in. And AOT has this book that I have. I'll just drop it off. It's quite a few pages, but it outlines all this stuff, how it plays in from the municipality through AOT, through the federal government in the transportation sector. So it's just a recommendation that we identify projects, identify roads and needs, and get a scoping study and all the elements checked. And then the next year we can apply for money to help with those projects. So that's where we are on that. And I'll take any advice to move forward or not from you folks.
I think the scoping money for Piggery would be smart. because it's, we
School
need,
tree's kind of self-explanatory. We don't need to
and
spend
we don't
money
need
on it.
that, right?
Yeah.
We've already done the hydraulic end of it and got an idea on what we need to do to move forward.
Piggery, we would weigh the factor of a box versus a bridge. That one we could pull together pretty quickly.
Right.
So,
I'd say we'll get you the information, John. You'll submit it.
We have to submit it through the AOT folks portal. Yes, I can work with them, but there's a list of stuff we need, yeah.
I'm swamped right now. I can't take on anything else. I can get you the information between Chuck and I, but if you'll run with it, I say we do it.
I will do my best. So we are gonna, just for clarity, we are gonna look at going for scoping study for Pingree Road.
Piggery Road.
That's correct. The big culvert there that washed out during the flood.
Okay,
And we were forced to just throw dirt on top of and leave it as is.
okay. Alrighty, I will continue to work on that. And can we keep this on the agenda, Mr. Chair, until it expires November 24th?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sorry, forgive me. I wanted to touch on another thing I just wanted to give for clarification from when you contract for goods and services through FEMA reimbursement, there's state versus non-state. Do you folks, are you aware what type of entity you are? As far as, so you're considered a non-state entity, which there's different rules for state and non-state. And I wanted to kind of clear something I spoke last meeting on was when local, state, and federal rules differ, follow the rule that allows for compliance with all applicable layers. And so I wanted to clarify when I spoke on that at FEMA, that in your procurement process and when you do projects and we do scoping, when you look at the federal level procurement process, that's what it says. So if we have a local procurement process that says we're going to sole source and we're using federal money and they say, no, you have to get 3 bids. And I think Mr. Slice and our legal counsel spoke to this briefly. But I wanted to clarify that I made that statement last meeting and I want to read it verbatim right from FEMA's website, citing their laws for us and what type of entity we really are. So that's all I want to do. But thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Welcome packet under new business.
I can speak to that.
Sure.
So Pauline, Blake O'Brien and I have been meeting about a welcome packet, as I think you gave your blessing to a couple meetings ago.
Yes.
So we've been assembling some information and Pauline has gotten a quote on some nice folders that that could be used for the welcome packet and maybe for other town things. So in the quote, which I don't have in front of me, is about a little over $1,000, I think. So I guess we have the money in one of the.
We can cover it under office expenses.
Yeah, so I guess that's an FYI that we're going to, if that's all good with you, we'll
Yes.
order it and have something going pretty soon, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you very much. New business, moving on to possible adoption of the rules of procedure for municipal boards. This too, I'm going to ask everyone to table, but take an opportunity to take a look at this
Yeah.
For our next meeting, please, because it's very important that we do review it at least on an annual basis. Okay?
Okay.
Moving on to the bidding process discussion.
Isn't the person that wanted that not here?
That's correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Unfortunately, Jason's not with us tonight, so that one also, we have a lot of information on that. We will table that to his return at the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Moving on to the trash recycling bid.
So we had a bid opening. Jason was there. We received 2 sealed envelopes. One was a letter and one was a bid, unfortunately. So in your packet, you have the breakdown of it. And why am I not finding mine?
Rogerio?
Yes.
Yeah.
So FY '22, we were budgeting $264,915 for trash and recycling pickup, collection fee and assessment. For FY '23, with the bid proposal, collection would be up 23.5% at $175,440 per year. Trash tipping fee would be $105 per ton, which is up about 4%. Recycling is $132 per ton, which is up 10%. And the assessment looks to be like it's going to be level funded this year. So the budget would be $297,000 for FY '23. And with the bid, he states a 5% increase for the remaining 2 more years. For the 3-year contract.
In the letter that we received was somebody just saying thank you, but no thanks?
Casella wanted us to recondition our program as he did the last time. And he states it in a letter, and I can read it to you if you want. It's hard to believe that the last time Casella submitted a bid was back in 2014. I know the town is not in favor of the toterized program, but Casella has had great service and success in automating trash and recycling service in residential collection contracts. If the town would like to explore the different option to the currently collection program, I would recommend every other week collection using a 64-gallon tote for trash and every other week collection of zero sort using a 96-gallon tote. This program has been operating for over 10 years in Enfield. The collection method is pay-as-you-throw, which would suffice for the state of Vermont. And it just keeps going on about the program. Our biggest concern with the program the last time he did this was the size of the totes. That is fine for myself, but it's surely not going to be fine for the elderly or a single mom, etc. Once you load those, you won't be able to roll them. My house alone, I wheel mine down in, I pick it up every Monday, put it in the back of my truck, bring it down to the bottom of the hill. They're not going to be able to do that. The totes are too big, and it would be a mandatory purchase through the program of these 2-size totes, period.
I mean, this is an either or situation, right?
This is an option that Jim Topher is only going to give us with no pricing. There was no pricing.
Well, I think Rogerio has been doing a fantastic job, and
I'm just reading out what was told to me.
I don't think we should even think about it.
I at this point, I agree. There was one solid price. It was, and I did get a response from Jim Topher and said those prices that he quoted us are very in line with trash collection in modern day.
Sue Harlow.
So my question is, a 23% increase in collection, did you say what those increased costs were?
The collection is trucking.
So that is because there are more households, or the price of fuel? Or?
Everything has gone up, as you know. The tonnage has gone up, so he is.
I always thought
he has to halfway through the route has to go empty and come back.
I understand.
Because of, again, trash volumes and recycling volumes are up substantially.
The equipment took a
So
huge
equipment,
jump
fuel.
over last year.
Equipment took a huge jump.
And I honestly, I never could figure out how he could even make a living at $140,000 a year.
I think he's been fantastic.
You just going like, before you touch anything. The only thing keeps getting alarming that when we first started, recycling was was a better deal. And you get to a point where the other company you're just talking about has a zero source, what would keep you honest? Because right now you just want to throw it all away. You don't want to even pull it out. So how would you know they're not even separating it? They're just saying, okay, I took your recycles, but it ends up in the same dump.
We get slips that show exactly how many tons that they recycled and how many tons they put into trash. They're attached to our bill. Our bill is like
That's what I
yay
said.
thick.
It's getting to be more expensive, but it is, but I'm saying, Excel offers that zero source. I'm just questioning how do they separate it when they're all done? Because they're taking all.
Just like Ruggiero.
There's
Ruggiero's zero sort. So it's the
You
same
don't have to
thing,
separate the cardboard from the plastic.
No.
from the glass to the,
The way I saw it from Casella, no, they dumped the garbage in with the recycle.
no. That's why you have two totes. You have
Not
a
the-
64 and a 96.
Not the towns I saw it in, but I must not have saw it right.
Well, that's what this proposal was and is two huge totes.
That's legally, right? That's what it's gotta be in this.
Pay your throw.
Yeah.
Pay your throw, yes.
Okay. You need
Yes,
you need a vote on this.
I do.
because this-
I move that we continue our contract, or we accept the contract of Ruggiero.
And this is for 3 years?
this price is the first year, and it's 5% increase for the next two.
But what we're voting on is 1 year or 3 years?
3 years.
This is a 3-year contract.
Okay. I second the motion.
Motion has been made to accept the bid for trash removal, from Ruggiero Brothers, a 3-year contract, and seconded.
We're on the discussion still.
We are. Is there any other discussion?
Well, how does this compare to where we just gave them, he came and asked for help and we gave him some help? So that number is still below this number.
It's the 264, 915. That's what the year we're in presently. That's what we budgeted. And that's where he's at.
We budgeted a number, then he came and asked for more help.
That was a year ago for this year. So that number is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Before we move forward, any public comment on this contract? Okay. You're good?
No.
Okay, we have motion to accept the contract as presented and seconded. I will now entertain a vote. All those in favor of accepting the contract, Ruggiero Brothers, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
So you put a name in here, it's not Ruggiero Brothers.
Ruggiero Trash?
Ruggiero Trash LLC.
Let the record reflect that it's Ruggiero Trash and not Ruggiero Brothers, and I certainly apologize for that. Motion accepted, and contract is adopted. Front entrance, bid.
We placed those out also and received one bid from Cole Streeter LLC for $20,359.53.
To do what?
Front entrance, so that's the stairs, the landings, the walls, the ceilings,
Okay. I have one.
fix the cracks, paint it.
You do.
It's the last.
It's everything but
piece of-
this door, he's not touching this door?
They're not touching the doors.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it says inside the door, that's inside the downstairs outside door,
that's correct.
but not.
And the closet doors,
In the closet door, but not not the back of this door.
that's correct.
And we got the 20,000 set aside?
We asked for 35,
Right.
so yes,
And you need a motion to accept the bid?
yes, please.
I'll make a motion that we accept the bid from Sam Streeter for the,
Cole Streeter.
oh,
Cole Streeter.
doesn't even say.
Actually, Streeter LLC.
Yeah, Streeter, yeah. For Streeter LLC, for not to exceed $20,360.
Motion made, do I have a second? Motion to accept Streeter LLC's proposal for The work on the front entrance way has been made and seconded.
I just have a question. And when would this be done by? Is there a deadline or?
He is going to work as he can on the stairs and one at a time.
Yeah.
And then when he does the main entrance, it's got to be done in a day or two.
Right.
Because that's our main way to get in. So, and he realizes that. So he's hoping this winter.
Yeah.
We didn't pin him down to a month, but.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, observations? Okay, sticking with the original motion that has been made and seconded to adopt the contract to fix the front entrance made by Streeter LLC. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Seeing none, Streeter LLC's bid has been accepted. The contract is adopted. Executive session has been tabled. Cemetery deeds.
This is house cleaning. We have finally finished our land survey of the cemeteries, and we have a few mislabeled ones, and these are them. So these are all purchased. These are just redoing the numbers for them to make them correct in the location that they are in. So these 5 is what I've been told is that they are just house cleaning items.
So basically, you've done the section E, the grade 93, is that what you're talking about? Because these people have all been approved.
That's correct. So we're moving these to the point, and
Functionally, what is it that you need us to do here?
because it's such house cleaning and not individual, I would say a single motion accepting, and I would list these by name in the motion, and then approve them for either reassignment or just cleaning up the numbers from the old cemetery.
Well, one of the party has 2, so there's really only 4 people. So Harley Rounds has 2 different parcels being corrected currently, so, see?
Section E, yeah, one grave is 86, the other grave is 70.
70 and 71.
Right.
Hmm.
So if we don't put this, if we don't put in what the section is, you won't know how to make the motion unless we just prove
Then do
that.
them one at a time if you're.
I don't know, whatever way you want to do.
I honestly, it doesn't make a bit of difference to me.
Okay, let's, I'll entertain the motions to cure
Let Sue do it.
these deeds, starting with Trina Janacek.
She's actually
So
my cousin. So
I move that we approve the assignment of the grave for Trina Janasek.
Section E.
Section
grade
E
93.
grave, 93, in the Westminster New Cemetery.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt Trina Janasek, Section E, grave 93, Westminster's New Cemetery. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none.
I move that we reassign the grave for Isolde Parda in Section E, grave 78 in the New Cemetery.
I'll second.
Motion has been made to reassign Isolde Parda in Section E, grave 78 in Westminster New Cemetery. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I move we reassign to Harlan P. Rounds Jr. and Cheryl A. Rounds, Section E, grave 71 in the New Cemetery.
Why don't you do the other one too at the same time, right?
Yeah, you can
Okay,
do
as
70.
well as Section E, grave 70 in the New Cemetery.
Okay. I have second it.
Motion has been made to reassign cemetery plots, Harlan P. Rounds Jr., Cheryl A. Rounds as husband and wife, to Section E grave 70 in New Cemetery and respectively Section E grave 71 in New Cemetery. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that we reassign to Jeffrey Supernaw in Section E, grave 86 in the Westminster New Cemetery.
I'll second it.
Motion to reassign Jeffrey Supernaw, grave burial 1, Section E, grave 86 in the Westminster New Cemetery. Westminster New Cemetery. All those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
moving on to the manager's report.
Briefly, we had a tax sale today. Very pleasingly, it went down to 3 lots. All 3 lots were sold, including the Christian Blake property, which has been at tax sale for 3 years running, which is awesome. That's great stuff, to get them back on the tax roll. But anyway, it was a very successful morning. I will be out tomorrow and Friday of this week for personal reasons. Veterans Day, I told you this the last time, Veterans Day is on the Thursday. The office will be closed on Friday. We will work on the 11th in observance to Veterans Day. And we will also be pulling the flags on the week of the 1st of the cemeteries, as we do every year.
On the 1st of November?
Of the 1st of November, yeah. And so that they can be burned in ceremony on Veterans Day.
Oh,
The Regional Emergency Management Committee second member will be Cole Streeter. So he accepted it with no problems.
Boards and commissions.
Nothing to report.
Is there any other business at this time for the board? We will entertain it now. Public? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to, our next meeting will be November 10th, 2021, here at 6:30 PM. I will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
so moved.
I'm gonna say, that's the one Toby always
Yeah,
likes to make.
second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.